When we bought our home and property here in coastal North Carolina in 2015, it was wide open. In a new construction neighborhood, the builder had decided that cutting down trees would be the easiest thing to do when building this development, and so we bought a property literally wide open. Actually, we had one tree that was left on our property. Besides that, we had to start from scratch, putting any sort of privacy, trees, anything you can think of, we had to do that. So I want to show you some of the things that we did do to create some privacy and some shade in our full sun garden. And boy, oh boy, let me tell you, we moved in the summer. North Carolina summers can be brutal, so we knew we had to get some shade going right away. Let me show you some of the things that we did do. So the very first thing we did was get this fence installed. So we got it around the entire perimeter of the yard. And we did that for two reasons. One was to really clearly delineate where our property line was so we knew where we could create flower beds, gardens, and plant some trees. But secondly, we knew we were getting a pool and a fence was going to be necessary for that as well. So pool was coming in the middle of our big blank slate, and now we could delineate the property line. The next thing we did after getting the fence installed was we began to plant some trees. So we went to good old Costco and found the Leland cypress for $50 each, and we bought 15 of them, and we decided to line our entire back fence line. A 6-foot fence is nice, but it's not as much privacy as we were looking for, especially because we knew we were going to create our own little tropical oasis with the pool in the backyard. So Leland cypress. So the really nice thing about Leland cypress, as you can see them over the fence line there, is they're evergreen, of course. They grow wide and they're fairly fast growing. But then in 2018, we got Hurricane Florence here in southeastern North Carolina. Hurricane Florence dropped, tons and tons and tons of water in our area over a 2-day period, and it just flooded the ground. The ground was so saturated that the trees we had planted were all tipped over. We were able to stand them all back up once the ground dried out enough, but it turned out we lost a few of them. We replaced 3 of those trees, and you can see a height difference, unfortunately, in the background, because the growing time, you know how it is. We replaced them, they're just not growing as quickly as the other ones. So our line is slightly off. Nevertheless, we still have our evergreens growing behind the fence. Okay, so besides the Leland cypress, which are the evergreens that we picked for the back fence line, we also decided to go with arborvitae along a perpendicular fence line. Now the reason why we chose the arborvitae for the inside was we wanted a bit of a slimmer tree than what we had on the back. But we chose these arborvitae in particular instead of the very fast growing green giant arborvitae, which would have been amazing in terms of patience for growing time. But alas, we went with these because they actually end up only growing to be about 15 feet tall. The green giants, I don't remember if it was like 80 feet or something, which is sort of mind-blowing for an inside property line. We just felt like that was a little too obnoxious for a neighborhood that got essentially all of their trees cut down. We didn't suddenly want these trees growing up 80 feet in the middle of our property line. So we went for these, like I said. Had to sacrifice a little bit of the growing time here, but these guys are beginning to fill out and to get taller, and certainly they're taller than the fence line, which is awesome. But trees are one of the things that you can use to change your sight lines and change the amount of privacy you have or the amount of shade you have, but you have to wait the growing period for your trees to provide what you want. Sometimes you need something a little more instant than that, am I right? So we actually opted to build some things as well, and that's the next part I'd like to show you. So in the same line as the row of arborvitae that we planted, we decided to do these privacy screens. These privacy screens were built essentially as the outer shell of a box in which these decorative panels that we purchased could slide right into, and then we would just screw a piece of trim wood to the bottom and to the top to hold those decorative panels in place. And the reason why we did that is back to the hurricanes again. Hurricane winds, unfortunately, are part of our life here, and we do have to go through hurricane season. So if we know that we're going to get a really high wind, it would make it easy for us to take these panels out, remove them, and store them safely. Now, that was the original plan behind these decorative panels, but something else happened. Let me show you what that something else is. Can you see this right here? This is the something else, and it's called wisteria. Wisteria is a flowering vine. It flowers largely in the spring, early spring. It has beautiful cascading purple plumes of flowers, and does have some right now in the summer. Well, the wisteria that we got, we have 2 of them, and I will show you the full picture, had just got ginormous, and it started to weave itself around those decorative panels that we bought, to the point that I told my husband, hey, maybe we can just use the wisteria to kind of hold those decorative panels in place so we don't actually have to remove them when a hurricane comes. And I will show you the other side and show you exactly what I mean about that. Okay, so the wisteria that I was just standing in front of is down there on the end of a 3-part decorative panel series. This wisteria right here is the one that took off in a monstrous way. Now, I'm not complaining, I love it. The wisteria was fast growing and it offers us plenty of shade and privacy. Now, it is not an evergreen, however, its vines actually stay where they are all winter long, and so there is always some sort of privacy because of this plant. Now, the fact that the vine wrapped itself around at least this first panel very securely, we know we will not have to remove that one at all. I think the one in the middle is the biggest question mark at this point, but nevertheless, this entire thing was 100% created by us in order to have something beautiful to look at. We have nothing against our neighbors whatsoever on either side of us, but you still want your line of sight to be something particular. And when you're creating a look and feel for your garden and your yard space, you don't want to just see other people's houses. Sometimes you want to see natural beauty. And in this case, those decorative panels that have almost a leaf pattern cut into them, I will leave a link below to tell you where we got those. Sometimes that just does the trick for you. Now, when I started out, I told you that our builder left us with 1 tree. That 1 tree was about right here. Well, cut to 2020, we had another storm. I don't even remember if it was a hurricane or a tropical storm, to be honest with you, but it was Isaias was the name of it. Well, that storm was enough to take our one and only mature tree down off of our property. So that happened in 2020. So as if 2020 wasn't bad enough, right? Now I lose my one and only mature tree on my property. That was pretty devastating. So what I decided to do was take all the landscaping that had been around my one mature tree and move it to somewhere else. And if I could save the life of at least all of those plants that were around the tree, maybe that would be some sort of consolation for me. So what we decided to do was almost mirror the decorative privacy screen panels that we had done directly across the yard and put them over here. Unfortunately, we only had 2, so we decided to do it a little bit differently on this side. So we did the 2 decorative panels, and all the plants that got put underneath those panels were all things that had surrounded the base of that big tree that tipped over. Now, in the middle here, I have a crepe myrtle tree. That crepe myrtle was given to me by a friend. It was just a baby beneath that other tree, and now it's loving its life. It's doing well. It's getting tall. It's now taller than the fence. So all of these things are beginning to come together. Yee! All right, so we got the fence, we got some evergreens going, we got some privacy screens, instant privacy put up, and the landscaping just keeps developing around the whole thing. So this is a prime example of how our landscape was developing. To this end of our front peninsula garden, we have another crepe myrtle, another baby that a friend had given to us that is starting to get very nice in size. And then at that end, we have a magnolia tree. Now the magnolia isn't an evergreen that you might think of when you think of planting an evergreen, but that one is also looking so large. We put that in the ground, I think it was maybe the year of Florence, so 2018. So here we are about 5 years later. It's at least doubled in size because I don't think it was as tall as the fence when we put that in. So a decently fast growing tree again, and it's getting wide as well. So we got that going, our crepe myrtles are going, our landscaping is going all over the place, and the other things that I mentioned. Now, obviously, any buildings that you may put up, like a shed or like a greenhouse, are going to change your sightlines immediately. That probably goes without saying, but yet these were things that we also added in that we didn't have before. Getting a pool obviously changed our landscape and our property tremendously. But of course, it also made us just even more anxious to try to get the privacy and the shade and all the things built and changing the sight lines and all that kind of stuff. We wanted to get all of that stuff done, even more so because we had this space to enjoy. So it kind of goes like this. You make yourself a little more crazy when you get something that you've always wanted. Some other things that changed our sight lines, though, that we did intend for are some of the taller landscaping elements that, while yes, banana trees are trees, they're also not evergreen. These babies get cut down every winter, etc. But for a good part of the year and a good part of the season that we're outside, things like the banana trees that get quite tall, or even this bush in the back corner over here, which secretly is actually a weed that happens to like wetlands, so it worked for us because we do have wetlands around our property. So this weed here is an evergreen, and obviously it's taller than the fence as well, so that was a nifty little find. So you can see that it's a combination of things that you plant, that you build, and maybe, like I said, a structure like a greenhouse or a shed that you put onto your property that can change your sight lines immediately. Now, we are not done. Our yard is 100% a work in progress, and I have other big plans to change things, build arches. I have more wisteria that I want to plant. I have other vines that I want to try. So I will be doing many more things while I wait patiently for trees to grow. I'm Nicole Roggeman. Thank you so much for watching my video, and happy planting.